discuss the facts, if at all, and to make clear what our prospects are for going forward. Next week's vote is simply a vote to say yes or no to proceeding with the talks with Rosemont. We are now obviously in August, which means that we have 9 more months of our lease here. What we don't want to do as a council is to spend time pursuing something that the people are not behind. So next week's vote is just to tell the council yes or no. Do we want to proceed with the talks? Do we want to find out what it would be like to come together? Or is it just not a possibility and we don't want anything to do with it? Stop the talks and look for something else. Okay, so that's where we're at. I have the basket. I will also take questions from the floor. And some of these we may not be able to answer because a lot of things are going to have to be discussed in committees in order to find the answers, but we'll see what we have here. Okay, what modifications to sanctuary will be made and parking as an issue? Great questions, but we don't have answers to those. Those would be something that we would discuss coming together as the 2 congregations of Blessed Trinity and Rosemont. Now, the parking issue has been delved into a bit. Pastor Jack has spoken with the city. Crosswalks have been applied for, and special parking for the handicapped in the front of the church, much like we have out here, has also been requested. So that's the first step. There have been other ideas that have been thrown out, but you know, there are things that can be pursued if we decide to go forward. All right. If possible, bring back Saturday evening service. As we are an older congregation, it will become more difficult to drive a greater distance to get to worship. Okay, so Saturday night is definitely been spoken about. We also have talked about multiple services on a Sunday, and the distance is, for one person it may be farther, for another person it may be closer. So, you know, it is within the Bethlehem limits, and that is one of the things that we've been trying to pursue. Oh boy. Will there be a call process for the pastor if we agree to merge with Rosemont? Absolutely. Our call committee will be joined by people from Rosemont, and Pastor Jack will have to go through the entire process of a called pastor for the new entity. So that means he has submitted, Catherine, help me out here. What is that called that you submit?
Roster minister profile.
That's it. He submitted the roster minister profile, and he is in touch with the synod as follow-up. There have been other requests, other forms that have to be done. So he is going through that process. Then the call committee would go through their regular process of interviewing the pastor and that sort of thing, and hearing him preach, and the congregation hearing him preach, and then the congregation gets to vote. So all of those steps will be part of the journey. Is there a plan for making the church handicapped accessible? Absolutely. We've already contacted contractors to look at elevator installation, and also there are some minor things that need to be done to the restrooms in order to make them up to standard, but they're pretty good right now, but just a little bit of tweaking. But the elevator is a major thing that we would be looking at. If we merge, there will be 2 organists. What is the plan to manage this? Staffing will be one of the committees that is formed, and staffing will be determined as our needs present themselves. Are there currently any discussions with St. Mark's concerning merger? No, there are not. St. Mark's got back to us in about, I'd say, Joe, where are you, 6 weeks? Yeah, after our initial contact with them, and said that, you know, they would be interested in talking about how we could be mutually beneficial to each other. That's as far as those talks went. Okay. Okay, this one says Saturday service returning, which we will have. 3 Lutheran churches in proximity in West Bethlehem: Rosemont, St. Stephen's, Star of Bethlehem. Nothing in South or North or Northeast Bethlehem. Valid concern, however, there are no properties available in those locations. So everything that we have seen has, you know, that dictates where we can go. Mike, do you want to speak to that anymore?
No, I think we should have to keep looking and bring forward any opportunities.
Okay. So Lucy is still looking, but nothing is coming forward. Okay. Sorry, I needed to figure out where the lines are not real clear for me. You got rid of my church, St. John's, and church at Lehigh, both great buildings. It's just a house, that's all. And I can understand that no one wanted to lose their church, but it's just a house to come together and worship. Just saying. Okay, thank you. What is the status of combining with St. Mark's? Okay, that one was already dealt with. Okay. Question, will the live stream worship ministry continue if we are in the Rosemont building and with Pastor Jack? The preliminary talks have been affirmative, that we should be able to bring our equipment over and the live stream should be able to continue. Okay. That's it. Any other questions?
Going back to St. Mark's, if they have now come back to us and asked for more conversation, why would we not converse with them? They have a lot of parking, their building looks pretty much on one level, it might be a lower level, I don't know. But if they have now come to us, would it be a good idea for us to at least dignify their response to us by a response to them?
Oh, well, we certainly have responded to them. We indicated to them, well, Joe, maybe you want to address this.
We have, like you said, we started conversations with them, and it was just like the getting.
Joe, can you shout or use the mic, please?
He really wants to shout, but he's coming up here.
I don't have the right shirt on the show. We did start conversations as Kendra, council president, the 4 executive officers with their council on that. And it was just to see how it would go with because they were not a church that was listing on the market. So we went to meet with them to see if there was any mutual beneficial ways to come together. So it was a meeting we had, a really early preliminary meeting to see if they were interested at all. Like we said, it did take 6 to 8 weeks for them to get back to us in the waiting period to see, do they want to progress it? You know, they said they wanted to bring it to their church members. They had a council meeting. It was just a wait. While we were there, however, there is parking there. It is all one single floor, but there are only 3 small offices, 1 sanctuary, which is tight, and a social room, which is not small, but it's not, I don't think it would be adequately fit the combination of all the churches together. That's it. There is no more space available. So the building itself is constrictively small to get to, for all our needs, as we were needing, several offices, choir room, pastor's room, and just the whole social room in there. The kitchen itself there is, if I remember correctly, not a commercial kitchen. They said most of the food was brought in So even if like preparing or cooking or anything like that, it would not meet the current needs. So the building as it stands as it is may fit in the sanctuary, but that's probably about it. And, if we want to have any other type of services or anything there, even offices, we're looking at an addition, which would take months, years, and costly.
So just to be clear on that, as they were deciding what their response was going to be, the Rosemont situation came up. So we were already in talks with Rosemont when they responded. I don't think that it's in anyone's best interest to try to juggle two at one time. I saw a hand, I'm sorry. Catherine.
First, a comment. St. Mark's was built as a first unit with the intention that it would be expanded if necessary. So they've got a lot of property,
Correct.
and we've got a lot of money. So it sounds like that might be something for us to keep in mind. Primary question is, have you considered something other than a merger? As we know, mergers are very complicated. We haven't finished all of the work that needs to be done for this merger yet. So starting another one would be a big job, as I know would acknowledge. He's still doing the financial part of this merger. And there would be other ways to bring congregations together other than a merger that would be a big legal process and very permanent. So has there been any creative thinking about it?
No, but if you know of processes that you could share with the council, that would be great.
The UPG is a process just like that. Multiple congregations sharing a pastor, sharing expenses. In this case, we could also share a building, but not merging.
Okay. And we can certainly explore that as if we decide to go forward.
Being very clear that if we vote going ahead, we're not voting going ahead with a merger.
We're voting,
Going ahead with cooperation of some sort.
right, we're voting to continue the talks.
We don't need to start a constitution, we don't need to do those things.
Well, I'm not saying we're not going to do those things, but if,
I just want us to be careful that we're not locking ourselves into one way of thinking. A constitution, it sounds like we're locking ourselves into a merger.
which is the intent at this time, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. Things happen along the way that change the direction. So I go back to my initial statement of the idea of the vote is to see if we want to proceed with the talks with Rosemont. That's the vote. And again, it's not binding. So there's nothing that's, nobody's going to sign anything to say that we're locked into it. So if we proceed and as we go forward, if that's felt to be something that we want to pursue, then that would come into the talks. BK.
Looking at this proposal, it's not a proposal, it's maybe an option. My option for the vote, if there's a possibility that we're going to get locked into a constitution and merger, then I don't have to write no for this. Because I don't want to get locked in.
Okay, there is no locking in. This vote is not a binding vote. The vote is simply, do we want to pursue talks with Rosemont? The talks would be to see about coming together in some form so that we would have the building, the pastor, and their congregation. However that looks at the end, that's what then the final vote would be. This vote is much like the task force vote that was taken at the end of all of those reports. Tony stood up and gave the presentation for the PowerPoint, and then we voted. And it was made very clear, we voted if we wanted to go ahead with bringing all three congregations together. It was made very clear at that point that a yes vote didn't mean, and I believe Catherine was one of the proponents of this, that doesn't mean that anything that we're bound together in any way. It's a non-binding vote. That's what this vote is. It's non-binding. The council just wants to know, is this something you want to pursue? We don't have, and I was told not to say this, but I'm saying it anyway. We don't have a lot of options out there, folks. Mike will tell you there are no buildings. Mike will tell you there is no property that we can take and make into a church facility. This building is not an option. We have 9 months left on our lease. The lease was designed as a 6-month lease with the option for another 6 months. We did that option. That option expires next May. So what we're looking at is if we don't have something to go to, we have to empty this building. Remember, we're already paying $800 a month for storage of the things that couldn't fit in this building. We're going to have to take that. We're going to have to find a place to worship and find some offices for us temporarily. And then after that, if we find someplace, we're going to have to move everything again. That's what we're looking at. Now, that doesn't mean, oh, well then, let's turn around. Well, yeah, we got to do this. No, we don't have to do this. But for my personal beliefs, this is a gift from God. God has said, here you go. It's right here for you. That's just me. In the back. Yes, you.
All of this is from my opinion only, and I appreciate the time to get everything off my chest.
Okay, would you like to come forward?
Not really.
Oh.
I think I can speak loud enough.
Okay.
Rosemont is located in Lehigh County. There is virtually no parking. I know you have to walk along Broad Street, which to me would not be conducive to walking. I wondered why we didn't have any foresight here to macadam the front yard. I am not opposed to other Lutherans joining us
Thank you. Do you want any of that repeated in the back? Kathy, are you okay back there with that? Or do I need to summarize it? A brief summary? Okay. I believe that it was about all of the congregations that we've brought together, the possibility of staying here and having Lehigh donate the building, the parking issue at Rosemont, and the parking issue here. Is that a fair enough summary? Okay, all right. Linda.
What was our final word to St. Mark's when they wanted perhaps to continue talks? And I would also question, why could not the location committee go and look at the building like we did in the other churches and form our own opinion? It sounds like we haven't been ignored in that process.
I believe it was explained that they did not get back to us until after we had already started with Rosemont. So at that point, it was felt that Rosemont was already in talks with us. We did explain to, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, we did explain to St. Mark's that we would get back to them if anything fell through with the other talks. Is that correct?
Yes, we did reply to St. Mark's saying that in the meantime of their reply, we did have another offer come to us. So until we know where we are going, we thank them for their time and told them we will keep them up to date as we proceed along with our congregations. So,
But isn't that another option? If Lucy had given us 2 buildings to look at, we
Lucy-
would have gone in both of them.
Lucy could not give us that option to look at that building because that building was not up for sale. She even went and called to arrange something, but there was no one ever in the office at the church facility and no calls returned. The only way that I was able to reach out, because I knew a member from a St. John's Farmersville that went to St. Mark's. So I reached out from a council to council as far as that, as opposed to the property team coming in and saying, hey, we want to buy your building. I approached it with the council, with their approval, as far as saying, can we go ahead and start with a conversation with combining resources, as opposed to a way of coming in and say, hey, we want your building.
I understand it's been difficult, things could be twisted in between, I'm sure, with St. Mark's, because I don't think they have a pastor right now.
They are in the same situation that we are. They have a supply pastor on a permanent basis, which was one of the delays because he was going to be on vacation, so that delayed the time that they could come and meet with us. So that prolonged that also. Yes, Karen.
With the shortage of pastors right now,
Right, with the shortage of pastors, we're looking at a pastor that's available to us as a full-time pastor. So that to me is a benefit. Karen?
This is just an opinion, but if time is of the essence, and there aren't a lot of properties available, my feeling is we don't just have talks with one option. If St. Mark's is willing to talk, I believe that someone needs to have a conversation with them, so we have all the options on the table.
Right. Okay, so Karen's saying that if St. Mark's is willing to talk, then we should be talking with both congregations. I'm sorry? Why not? Well, first of all, it's a very delicate situation in trying to court both congregations at the same time. So what St. Mark's offered on the table was much different than what Rosemont offered on the table. St. Mark's isn't even sure that they want to pursue anything, whereas Rosemont is come, share our building, no need to buy anything. We have a building, we have a pastor, we can combine forces, and we can move forward. St. Mark's is, well, we certainly can talk about things, but right now, we don't feel that we need any outside help. We are doing okay on our own, but we'll listen to what you have to offer. Is that a fair summary? Okay. Yes?
Point of clarification, you said a positive vote next week would allow for a conversation to continue.
Correct.
A no vote would stop the process.
That is correct.
Never address the no vote, but that would,
No, I believe, well, I said if there was a no vote, we would cease, we would not continue the conversation, and we would wait for another offer to come. Is-
In that sense, then, the vote could be binding next week, because you keep on saying it's not binding.
It's not binding,
The vote would be binding to the end.
well,
The council cannot decide to proceed after, is that correct?
not necessarily, that's not binding either, but all we're trying to do is to find the will of the people, that's all. There's no reason to continue with the talks if people are not behind the idea.
so the no vote would be binding to not continue.
Yes, just as a yes vote would be binding to continue talks, but the word binding doesn't fit in either of those. It's one leads to this and one leads to this. Yes?
I'm reading the last sentence of this letter. This unification that you providing would include the new congregation to be located at the current location of Rosemont Lutheran Church. So voting yes, that means that we're going forward, and it says this unification would include the new congregation to be located at the current location of Rosemont Lutheran Church, 1705 West Broad Street.
That's correct. So the yes is simply that, yes, we're interested in doing this. There is no legal document. The vote to make this a legal vote and a binding vote would entail having the merger document along with the new constitution, and that would be the 2/3 vote that we went through last time to do the merger. This is not that. This is simply the council coming to you as the congregation saying, is this something you want to pursue? Because there is no reason for us to put in months and months of work and prep to come to you and say, well, here it is, here's the package, this was what we were able to negotiate, or this is what we were able to come up with. And then for you to turn and say, nope, not what I want. I never wanted it. Why didn't you ask us? We're asking. We're asking if this is what you want. If it's not what you want, then that's fine, but please, then tell us what you want. What do you want us to do? Where do you want us to go? How do we find a building that doesn't exist? Please, that's where we will need help. Yes, Tracy.
I just want everyone to know that they're voting as well. So if they say no, there's no more talking, right? So it's not just us. There's another group of people, well, it's only 20, they have a voice as well.
Thank you, valid point. Michelle?
If the call committee decides that the pastor is the one that you want for a conversation, does that mean you lose the building too?
Yes. The question was, if the call committee decides that the pastor is not someone that fits with our congregation, does that mean that the building is also not available? And the answer to that is yes. There's another situation where if the call committee decides, nope, this isn't going to work, then there's no deal. Ray?
Is this building for sale?
No. Joe?
I heard from a member within our congregation regarding the pastor that he heard from another outside source that that pastor does not believe in
No, there isn't. We did discuss this at council, and Joe was the plant, if you can't tell, in case it didn't show up in the basket. And that is a rumor that is going around, and it is an untrue and unfounded rumor. So council asked if we could approach Pastor Jack and just get clarification on his belief in Easter. So this is an email from Pastor Jack. Just to clarify, I believe out of all the Christian holidays, none is as important as Easter. It is the central focus of the Christian church. Easter represents Christ's victory over sin and death and is the cornerstone of Christian doctrine and my theology. Now, the next line he said I didn't have to read, but I think it really reflects who he is. I may not believe in the Easter bunny, but Christ's resurrection is paramount to my faith. So I hope that dispels all of those rumors that are out there. Joe.
And is that true that the Synod has not heard of that accusation either?
That's correct. The Synod had no knowledge of that. And just Jack, as I told you before, Pastor Jack went and met with the Synod, which meant the bishop, Pastor Huber, Pastor Dan, and Jack. As a result of that meeting, there was an email that was sent and included me. The bishop wants everyone to know that he's here to help. Please do not hesitate to reach out. I am praying for all in this good process, and we're ready to be helpful. So there is no pushback. Sorry about that. There is no pushback from the bishop about Pastor Jack. The meeting went well.
But, and this points up the fact that many of us do not know much about Pastor Stelzer. And this is how rumors get started. How can we get to know him better? We had one worship service, we had worship in the park. We have not really talked to him personally. We heard him preach one sermon.
Right, and that's the whole idea here, Linda. It is a package, but let me answer the question. We're going to get to know Pastor Jack by a yes vote, allowing us to go forward with the process. That process is going to include many opportunities to interact with Rosemont. It's going to be much like we did with bringing the 3 congregations together. We went to each other's worship space at first, and then we decided that, well, why don't we just have one worship and have, at that time it was Pastor Jerry or, yeah, that's how it happened in the beginning, right in my mind, yeah. At any rate, so we just started to worship together. So that's what we're looking at. That's the way we would get to know him, and that's the way we will get to know their congregation. So no, it's not just 2 times and deciding. That's not it. We are deciding if this is something that we want to go forward with. That's all. It's kind of like bringing somebody home to meet your parents and then saying, well, he's all right, but all right, you can go out with him. That is, nobody's getting married, nobody's making a lifetime commitment. We're simply in the dating process. Joe.
And actually, if we went through the call process, we would only be able to meet the pastor once during the service on that. So this actually, getting to know and proceeding with the talks is actually a way of us being able to get to know the pastor even more than as if we just keep our ministry site profile out there and hope a pastor says, I wonder what that church is about. At that current time, then the call committee interviews them. If it goes forward, the council interviews them. If it goes forward, the congregation sees one service where he preaches, and then they vote. That's it. proceeding, if it's a yes vote, we will have a greater opportunity to meet him.
And to get to know him.
Yes.
Yes, Jane?
Is there any way that we can get more information regarding parking issues?
Yes, that would be one of the first things that we would be looking at in terms of the building, that and handicapped accessibility. The question was about parking issues, I'm sorry. Any more, how we could get more information about them. As I said, Pastor Jack has already been in touch with the city. Someone from the city has already been out to look at the site. Someone also suggested that we, I don't see that person right now, but there's a Tracy, what's that called? The Knitter's Corner, thank you. Yeah, thanks, just looking at you, see? The Knitter's Corner down the street has 10 parking spaces. It's 1 block away. So the suggestion was perhaps going to them. So there's a lot of brainstorming going on, trying to come up with ways, to lessen the burden of the parking. But when you look at the parking out here, it's really, it's an easier park than it is to go a couple blocks down in a residential area. Yes, Catherine?
Normally in the call process, the identity of the candidate is not known to anybody other than the call committee. And that's in part so that the call committee can make a fair decision.
Mm-hmm.
So they can ask hard questions and they can feel free to say yes or no. Since everybody knows who we're talking to, I'm concerned that the call committee will feel pressure, one way or the other. How can we make it possible for them to make an honest decision?
Well, I think first, my first thought in response to that would be, we have a pretty strong call committee, headed by Tony Villani. And Tony, if you know Tony, he's Tony. He's not going to be directed by anyone except for what his beliefs are and where he thinks things should go or how they should go. We have members from each of the previous congregations, all looking out for our best welfare. And then they'll have 2 people from their congregation to look at it also. And again, even if it gets past the call committee because they feel pressure, the congregation still is the one that makes the decision. And if that call presentation fails, then we're back to square one and we start all over with everything. Yes, Kathy.
The comment was made that we'll all get to know each other by visiting and being together in different ways. Regarding the pastor, I understand what Joe's description was of the call process and so on, but I wonder with this pastor if we might just get a little biography, where he served before, maybe where he studied and so on, just so we could together learn a little bit more about him.
Sure.
Is that possible?
I'm sure it's very possible. Catherine, isn't that part of the profile that's set up by the pastor?
Sort of, you have to
Pull details out. Okay, I can ask for that to be like a resume you're looking for. Yeah.
Would help us know a little more.
Right. Sure. Anyone else? Yes.
I really want this building. It's so far away from the campus, Lehigh University, or did they just want it because it was part of the package?
I don't really have an answer for that. They bought the building, it's their building. I don't know what their intent is, but I do know that, it's only our space until next May. Anyone else? Who? Oh, yes, sorry. How could I not see you? Yes, Betty.
You know, we're being pretty picky. I never went through this in any church. They called the pastor, we had the pastor, and that's the way it went.
Thank you, Betty. You're the best.
I believe in God.
Me too. That's it. Come on, Peter. Yes.
Well, I would just like to say, this process has been taking forever, and I'd like to get settled. This will come with a pastor, it comes with a church. Okay, parking is an issue, but maybe with the money that we have, that we won't spend on building an extension to St. Mark's, or finding a 7-Eleven to bring in. We can buy a bus and take it all up.
That's right.
That might be an option. You need to get going. It's been 3 years without a pastor. Let's go. Get this over with. Come on. And let my husband die.
Now, wait a minute here. Yes, Linda.
Delete that last comment.
I'm being annoying today, sorry. I think we're assuming that we will have this pastor because he comes to the building, but we still have to have the call process do their due diligence.
That-
I think we're assuming too much.
That has been stated, Linda. The call process will be as it always is, every step of the way. That has been stated by the Synod. That has been stated by the Synod. It will be monitored by the Synod, and it will go through the Synod.
But I hear some comments here that are making assumptions. That's what I say.
I don't hear any assumptions. I hear that that's what we're going to be doing.
What kind of a record does the Senate have?
I'll talk to that.
Oh, jeez.
I'm waiting for this.
Okay, wait, before she speaks, just remember that she's... her
We are
own
separate.
entity.
I am my own entity, but I've listened to so much over the past how many years. For all of you who loved Pastor Jerry and Shirley, right? How they were promised, as were we, that we would get help and support and guidance. We got nothing, they got nothing. And as true as I'm standing here, zip. So for all of you who wondered, they got absolutely nothing. While they're doing okay, still receive nothing. I want you to know, some of us, here's a little sidebar, are gay. Some of us receive mailings from the MCC church, right? Guess where their new church is? The Synod building, the building that was not available to us to be rented. MCC is taking that church. Well, renting it, but I understand they pretty much take things over. Anyway, that's what I think about the Synod. No disrespect, but what I have seen. And let me first say this. The cancer that was unleashed among our congregations about all of the stuff about Pastor Jerry, nothing was told. Everyone was left with their own demise, what they thought, what was told, what was heard, and nobody received any help or clarification. I just want you to know, that's what I think about the Synod.
Okay, that did represent the couple's opinion, I'd say. No disclaimer necessary.
Sorry.
I said no disclaimer necessary. I get, oh yeah, that was really, oh no! Anyone else? Okay, there are refreshments downstairs. We really appreciate you taking the time and putting forth the effort to give this serious thought, consideration, and prayerful consideration for next week's vote. Thank you very much.